We are going to make a black bean quesadilla with a fresh homemade pico de gallo right now. We're making this for you to be able to show seniors how to make this at home. You're going to give them a taste of it. I find that when I am cooking with seniors, they're particularly interested in what's good for their health. So I think you're always going to have a captive audience if you are talking about what is going to make them feel better. We're going to start by using a can of black beans. Black beans are a legume. I always drain the black beans and rinse them when I use them. That eliminates the extra fat and any salt and chemicals that are on the black beans, but it's mainly salt. And you're also always going to want to buy low sodium ingredients. When you're buying ingredients for your workshops, there are a lot of convenient online sources. They're particularly convenient because you can have it delivered within a small window. You can order exactly what you need for the recipe. If it's one bunch of cilantro, one 15-ounce can of beans, it's particularly convenient. Fresh Direct is one of those companies, Amazon Fresh, Peapod, and that's going to make your buying of your product list much, much easier for you. I would always have it delivered with enough time for you to make sure that you have everything that you need. Things do happen. You could not have it included in your order and you might need to run out and get it. I think that preparing for workshops is a really large part of their success. So you want to have read everything that's part of the online lesson plan for each one of these workshops. There are the recipes, there are the talking points for the recipe, there's the materials list for all of the utensils that you're going to need for it, and you're going to want to make sure at least 24 hours ahead of time that you have all of that there so that you're not scrambling around at the last minute to find it. So I have the black beans on, and I'm going to let them come up slowly to temperature. Black beans are a particularly good legume for seniors, although all legumes are good because they have a lot of insoluble fiber, and that's good for digestive health, and that's something that seniors are always concerned about. So if constipation is an issue for somebody, black beans, all legumes, kidney beans, lentils, they almost act as a scrubby going through your digestive tract and keep everything clean and moving. That's always an issue with seniors. While this is warming up, I'm going to make the fresh pico de gallo because you have a moment to do that. You can also use a jarred salsa if for some reason it's not a season when you can get fresh tomatoes, limes, onion, but it's always better to have a fresh salsa to use because you know exactly what went in it. You're not adding salt, you're not adding fat. This particular pico de gallo is tomatoes. It's very, very simple. Tomatoes, lime, onion, and cilantro. When I'm cutting these plum tomatoes, you could almost just include these small root end of the tomato, but I'm going to cut them out just a little bit. I have a razor sharp knife here. I don't know if you'll always have that. There are only a couple of ways that I use a knife. You want to be very careful while talking and prepping for these, so be mindful of your hands. I usually keep my knuckles as a guide for the knife if it's down, or I use my hand like a tunnel, and that's the safest, easiest way to use it. You should be using a knife that you're particularly comfortable with because you definitely don't want a knife accident while you're preparing this, all right? So the beans are starting to warm up, and I'm going to chop this. These tomatoes are particularly good fresh. They're full of vitamin C, and I believe potassium. That gives energy and is good for heart health, and particularly good for seniors. If you're taking a diuretic, you want to replace potassium in your system all the time. These are things that I'm sure you guys are studying, but you want to remember to let the seniors know why they're eating what they're eating. So it will be a good idea to let the seniors know that fresh tomatoes are a great thing for them to get plenty of in their diet, particularly when they're in season and taste their best. They're full of lycopene, which is a carotenoid. It protects your body. They're full of potassium and vitamin C. I'm also going to add about half of an onion. This is a particularly large onion, so make sure that sometimes less is more. I'm going to show you an easy way to slice an onion and do it quickly. Leave the root in on your onion, cut the top of the onion off, the stem end, and then put your hand on top with your fingers and slice almost all the way through 2 or 3 times, depending on how small you want. Turn it around to you and put the root end away from you and slice it very thinly at a 90-degree angle. And then you're going to turn it again 90 degrees and cut it into fine dice. If you want it bigger, just cut it larger. But this is a fast way to cut an onion, especially when you're doing a workshop. Onions are also great for you. They have a number of chemicals in them that keep you healthy. So I'm going to put close to the same amount, maybe a little bit less of onion as tomato. And it's important when you are cooking, especially in front of people and doing a demo, that you keep your mise en place or your workspace clean, so that they can see what you're doing and also so that it looks more appetizing. For the jalapeno, we usually take the seeds out. Be careful when you're using a jalapeno, because when you get it on your hands, if you rub it in your eyes, you're going to be really miserable for a good long time. So you might want to wear rubber gloves when you're using hot chilies. I'm also going to do these very finely so that people don't get. I haven't tasted this one, but not everyone loves hot chilies. You're going to determine that from the group that you're cooking for. And you might even ask them ahead of time if this is something that they want in it. If it's not, you could leave it out. Chilies are actually also high in vitamin C, so they do have a nutrient benefit. The flavoring agent that's going to bring this all together and make it really, really bright is the lime juice. A lot of times seniors don't have the hand strength to squeeze limes, and so using either a fork or a spoon. I usually use a spoon. Limes don't usually have seeds, so just squeeze with your left hand and move the spoon around with your right, and it's just as good as having a citrus squeezer on hand, okay? And it's particularly good for the seniors themselves. They'll use more of the ingredient if they're easy to use. And lime and lemon as a flavoring agent in your food is better and more flavorful than adding salt. So it's a great thing to have on hand. It makes everything taste better. It's a flavor enhancer. So I'm going to stir this up. Now we happen to have some cilantro on hand, which would be a traditional thing to add to pico de gallo, so I'm going to add just a little bit, all right? I've already washed these greens, but if you haven't, always wash your greens because it will ruin your food if they're gritty. And cilantro also has a number of beneficial vitamins. So I'm willing to bet this does not even need salt. If you did add salt, it would be a pinch, okay? And this is what, we make it now so that it has a chance to marinate while we make the beans. So the beans are now hot. I'm going to add to them the cheese and a little bit of salsa, the one that we made. So this is going to be about half a cup added in. That way you don't have to do it in each quesadilla. When you buy the cheese that you're going to use for this quesadilla, you're going to want to make sure that it's either a naturally low sodium cheese like mozzarella, or that it is a cheese that's made with low sodium. Less than 140 milligrams per serving is what you're looking for. So you can take the beans off the stove at this point. We're also going to stir in a half a cup of our homemade salsa, or pico de gallo. And I'm going to put the saute pan on the burner. Now we're going to pull out our corn tortillas. I'm going to now put about 2 tablespoons or a quarter of a cup on each tortilla, and I'm going to fold it over. I'm going to put a teaspoon of oil in the skillet. I'm going to turn it up a little bit. I'm going to let that get hot. Swirl it around. You can do this without any oil, but it kind of depends on the corn tortillas that you're using. If they have enough fat in them, they won't stick. If they don't, they will. So you definitely want to make sure that they don't stick to the pan, or it's going to ruin your demonstration. While you're talking about all of this, make sure to add the talking points that are online for this recipe. This particular recipe has almost 50% of the recommended protein for the day, each serving, which is a lot. Why do seniors want to get plenty of protein? Why do we all want plenty of protein? It repairs cells and tissues. It keeps our bodies, our muscles strong. That's also a particular issue for seniors, bone health and muscle strength. So they want to get plenty of protein. But I always tell the senior clients that I am working with that it's a particular trick when you, as you age. We as seniors need more nutrients and less calories in general, because they're not as active as they were at other points in their lives, right? And that's a very, very tricky thing to do, to get less calories and more nutrients. So you have to make sure that everything you're putting into your food is actually nutrient dense with plenty of protein, hopefully plant-based proteins, plenty of plant-based proteins and legumes, and not as many calories and not as much saturated fat. So this particular dish is a great example of getting all of those things. We're also going to garnish this, and I'll cut it now, with an avocado. Be very careful when you're doing this. This is the way I usually cut up avocados for salad or for a garnish. You can get the pit out by sticking your knife in there very carefully and then plucking it off. And instead of scooping the avocado or trying to peel it, you can just cut it on a grid in the exact size pieces that you want while it's in the shell, the peel. All right, so you cut it one way and then you cut it the opposite way. That way, when you scoop this out to use it as the garnish, it's already cut up. And avocados are a fruit that the more you handle them, they'll turn brown. So you can also take a little bit of your leftover lime and just squeeze it on there so that they don't turn brown while you're using them and later if you refrigerate any of this. Why are avocados such a healthy thing to get into our diet? They're full of monounsaturated fats, just like olive oil and other healthy vegetable oils, particularly nut oils. Avocados actually lower your bad cholesterol, your LDL cholesterol. So these are starting to cook. And since the beans are already hot, it's only going to take like 1 or 2 minutes on each side. So if you really wanted to crowd the pan or use a larger pan, you could do more at one time, which depending on how many people, you might want to get a large saute pan and set up 6 or 8 of these and do them all at one time. Sometimes it's just as fine to do a little bit at a time if you have 6 or 8 people. You can also take them out of the pan, these are almost done, and you can cut these in half so that people can start eating, and they'll eventually get 2 halves, but you're not making everybody wait. So I'm going to put a little more. I'm not measuring these beans, but you're putting 2 or 3 tablespoons or a 1/4 cup in each one, okay? And you're folding them over. I'm going to set these 2 up so that they'll be ready when we take out the other tortillas that are done. We're also going to serve these with the extra pico de gallo that we have and the avocado, which is going to make these really a meal in themselves or a snack. I would get your plate close by so that when you take them out, and if you don't have hands of that have been sitting in skillets for your whole life, you might want to not do what I'm doing. So I could probably fit one more in there, and I'll do that. You may be, depending on how many people sign up for one of your workshops, you may be doubling or tripling these recipes, in which case you're going to have to think about beforehand what size pans you're using for this, what size saute pans you're using to finish them off. All of those things are things that you're going to want to have thought about beforehand, because if you've got 12 or 18 people in your workshop, you're not going to want to stand here for 30 minutes to cook them all. It's fine if it's 5 or 10 minutes, but not 30 minutes, right? People will get impatient, okay? But once your pan heats up, they actually go faster. So I'm doing these so that they get just a little bit of color on there, but you don't want them to get too brown. These are like perfect because the pan has heated up a little bit. So if you wanted to, you could cut them into smaller pieces because they would be easier for people to eat. It depends on how you're serving them. You're going to serve them like this. I think it's nice if you, the workshop person, has them cut into pieces that they're able to eat like that. these are hard to eat with a knife and fork, right? So you're going to want to have them in more bite-sized pieces. So I say you put them on your plate, cut up. As they come out of the pan, you put a little bit of foil over them to keep them warm. And you have your serving plates right close by so that it's easy for you to serve your clients. They're likely to be asking you questions during this. What kind of tortilla are you using? Why are you using a corn tortilla instead of a flour tortilla? The corn tortillas are particularly healthy. They have plenty of fiber in them. They make the protein in the beans even higher because you've got a grain and a legume together. And they actually, in my mind, have a lot more flavor than the flour tortillas. And if somebody is gluten-free, which isn't true of a huge degree of our adult population, senior population, but you never know, it's nice to have the corn ones. So now you've got a serving platter, and you're going to put a couple of pieces on each plate. You're going to add a little bit of pico de gallo. Not too much because it's going to be too messy to eat, right? And you're going to spoon a little bit of avocado, which when you take the avocado, when it's already cut, when you take it out of the avocado, it's naturally in pieces, which is very convenient. All right? And that's what your end product should look like. You're going to pass these out to your clients, which I'm happy to give you guys some of. And you're going to go over any of the talking points while they're eating them that you weren't able to hit on while you were cooking, which it does take a while. Even for me, I do these a lot. It takes a while to be able to hit every nutritional component while you're cooking, and people like to hear that while they're eating. So anything that you haven't said, make sure that you have your talking points on hand. Avocados are particularly high in vitamin E and C. E is heart healthy. They're also high in vitamin K, which are great for bone strength. And they're high in potassium, which is good for your blood pressure. And as I said before, it's also good if you're on a diuretic. It replaces potassium in your system. Everyone needs potassium for many functions of your body. It's an extremely important mineral, and you want to make sure you have very low energy when your potassium's low. So that's a good thing to have. Lutein is also in avocados for your eyes. And folate is in avocados for healthy, an important B vitamin that keeps your whole body healthy. I also like to give seniors ideas for changing the recipe, possibly a little for themselves. I like to tell people that if they want to make something a little more nutrient dense for themselves, if they have some cooked carrots and peas in their refrigerator that aren't really enough for a meal, that would be a perfect thing to add to this. If they had a little leftover salad, they could put some spinach greens or any other kind of greens in here and just mix it up. I sneak all kinds of vegetables into quesadillas for my 21-year-old son. So I grate sweet potatoes into them raw, and as long as you're going to cook it for 10 or 15 minutes, if they're grated, they're going to become done. Carrots, if you have a raw carrot in your refrigerator, grating a little bit of raw carrot in this is a great thing to do. So I think it's always good to give the seniors extra ideas of how they can use things in their kitchen. Here is your black bean quesadilla with pico de gallo.